Hi, and welcome to the 2-Minute Warning. I am your host, Perry Busby. The 2-Minute Warning is brought to you by the Westside Gazette. The Westside Gazette is one of South Florida's oldest African-American owned newspapers. And my co-host tonight is the publisher of the Westside Gazette, my good friend, Bobby Henry. Bobby, how you doing, my brother?
Good evening, man. I'm doing the best that I can. You know, I'm here in North Carolina with my father, and I want to thank everybody for the well wishes. But I'm having some difficulties here, so please bear with me. I'm trying to cut down on the static and be heard at the same time. Are you experiencing any static in the background, Perry?
No, not at all. I hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Okay.
And give our regards to Mr. Levi Henry, the founder of the Westside Gazette, and just give him our love and let him know we're thinking about him. Man, but I am so looking forward to tonight's conversation. Man, with so much that's going on, but catch us up on what's been going on. That brings us up to today, man.
And you know, Perry, I'm here, like I said, in North Carolina, and I've been getting some bits and pieces about some stuff that has happened on the Capitol, in Tallahassee today. But far from that, what has led up to that is the actions of a certain governor that has caused a tremendous concern from everybody, you know, and we want to talk a little bit about that with perhaps somebody who can change things there. So that's where I see it, Perry. What about from your end?
The same. You know, we are now in this age of, now it seems like all we want to do is talk about pop culture. And the people who are talking about being canceled are the ones who are trying to cancel and have always been trying to cancel others from the culture. And now to just see some of the brazen attacks, and let's just be honest, you know, by some people, these attacks are going without any defense. And we may want to, and we wanted to, you know, and I'm sure there is, and we want to dispel that. But again, what we need now is a corrective, and our guest tonight is one of those people that is offering a corrective.
Okay, you're absolutely right, and we've been involved here, you and I, with different groups who are trying to come together and create a force that we can galvanize the community to really re-engage in this whole process, this whole electoral voting process. So, and right. Like you have a special guest, and I'm glad, and I'm waiting, you know, to bring him on. But we got two special guests, I think, Perry, and if I can jump right into this,
go ahead, let's go.
The fact that we have a celebrity amongst us, a young lady who's a sophomore in high school. She's been writing for the Westside Gazette for over a number of years, and she has gone on to publish some stuff. She's extremely creative. She's extremely active, and I'm just, what do they say, a peacock proud of this young lady. So if we can, let's bring on Miss Layla Davison.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome,
good evening,
Layla. Yeah. And I hear she's not just an author; she's a best-selling author.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Layla.
Hi, I am 15. I love to read and write. I've written my book called Words for Your Walk. It's a daily devotional for teen girls. I go to Fort Lauderdale High School, and I am in their magnet law program, and I aspire to be a lawyer and a journalist.
Okay, great.
Okay. So who else we got back there, Perry?
Man, want to bring Mr. Josh Jones. Josh is not just, well, he's from Orange County. as well as the CEO of Digital Advertising IO. Can we please? Josh Jones, how you doing, Josh?
I'm doing well. How's everyone this evening?
Just fine.
Just fine. Getting ready for this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just give us a brief bio.
Okay. Josh Jones, CEO of Digital Advertising.io, one of the top 100 fastest growing digital firms in the country. I'm also married, father of two, political junkie. So I'm happy to be here tonight.
Great.
Okay. Very good. Are you hearing me still, Perry?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, we got, our next guest is no stranger to the program, Mr. Brandon Freeney. Brandon is a community leader. He's a business therapist, and he's an impact entrepreneur. Brandon is no stranger to politics. He loves to talk about it. So let's bring Brandon on.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Come on, Brandon, give us a shout out. Who are you, man? Give us a little.
I'm a man that with a plan to attempt every day to try to change the world, and I'm doing that through impact entrepreneurship with my nonprofit organization, Positivity Pays, where we focus on positive messaging and positive imagery to combat the negative stereotypes in our community. So we're looking to change narratives and to change lives. And the celebrity that we have on is one that we've helped publish her book, and we're so glad to have her and others aspire to do great things.
Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, can we get a drum roll, please?
All right.
Very good. Well, first of all, let's bring on Mr. Crist. Bring him on, and let's talk while he's here. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you tonight? Honored to be with you.
Very well. We're glad that you're here. You're no stranger to the situation here in Florida. As a matter of fact, you climbed up the chain of how should I say this, the legislature to get to where you are. If I'm not mistaken, you were the last educational commissioner elected. Is that right?
That's a fact. You got it
okay.
right. That's absolutely.
And aside from that, this state that you will get to or trying to get to, you've been there before. So
yes,
you're
I've been governor before too. That's exactly right. Yeah. Yes. And attorney general, believe it or not, and state senator.
Martin Lee Anderson.
Yeah.
So if you will, Congressman, tell us a little bit more about yourself that we may not know.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I was born in Altoona, Pennsylvania. When I was 6 weeks old, my family moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where my father went to medical school at Emory University. And then when I was 3, we moved to St. Petersburg, Florida, where I grew up, went to public school, graduated from St. Petersburg High School. In fact, my principal, my senior year, was a dear friend and a great man named Mr. Verl Davis, the first Black principal at St. Petersburg High School. And we really were very close friends. And then when I went to college, I went to Wake Forest. You're in North Carolina tonight. I went to Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I was a walk-on quarterback there for 2 years, but missed Florida so much that I transferred back to Florida State University. Finished undergraduate there. I majored in government, minored in education. And then I went on to get my law degree at the Cumberland School of Law at Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama. Came back to St. Petersburg and started my first job as an attorney with the Baseball Commissioner's Office. The minor league division was based and still is based in St. Petersburg. So I worked under Commissioners Bowie Kuhn and Peter Ubroth in those days. Did that for a while, and then I started working for U.S. Senator Connie Mack. And it's kind of a baseball connection there, but did that for a while. He won an election to the Senate. I came on as his state director during his first year in the Senate, set up 6 offices across the state, and then went into private practice of law with my brother-in-law. And in 1992, I ran for the state Senate and got elected. And thereafter, in 2000, I ran for, as you said, Commissioner of Education of Florida, the last elected Commissioner of Education of Florida in 2000. 2002, I ran for Florida Attorney General, got elected. And then in 2006, got elected governor of Florida, honored to serve there until 2011. And in 2016, I got elected to Congress. And so this is my third term in the United States Congress, representing a significant portion of Tampa Bay.
Very good, very good. Well, I would like to, if we can, Perry and Josh and Brandon, if we can allow Miss Layla to open up the conversation. Ladies first. So let's do this. Let's try this. Layla, we'll start.
Okay. Well, while reading your platform, Mr. Crist, I saw that you follow the golden rule, and I just wanted to know how you intend to strive to promote unity rather than division.
Layla, thank you for the question. I appreciate it very much. And really, this goes back to my roots. My mother and father and my church taught me the golden rule, do unto others as you would have done unto you. And so, Layla, I wear these yellow wristbands every day, and it says, practice the golden rule every day. And, the author of the golden rule was Jesus Christ. And, he gave this Sermon on the Mount at the Sea of Galilee, where he talked about treat others as you want to be treated. And I think that's so important and fundamental for each and every one of us. And, we all see the discord and the arguing in political parties and in the politics in our country today is so divisive. It's obvious to me that what God would prefer is what Jesus talked about, that we treat each other with respect, with dignity, with kindness, with compassion. And that's how I've always tried to comport myself, because it's what Mom and Dad really emphasized on my three sisters and myself. I'm an only son. And so that's really where that comes from. And you're very kind to ask about it. And let me congratulate you on your great work, on your writing, and your wonderful success. Much more to come, I am sure. God bless you.
Thank you.
Yes,
I also wanted to kind of talk about and get into how you envision supporting small and minority businesses in the coming days, because, COVID has really affected those businesses. So I just really wanted to know your effects on how you plan on doing that.
Well, number one, we're blessed to live in the Sunshine State. I mean, Florida's beautiful. Like I said, I'm down here in Fort Lauderdale. I look out and I can see the Atlantic Ocean in the distance. When I'm at home, it's Tampa Bay. And because of that beauty, I think it's so important for us to understand what the major businesses are in our state. Tourism is probably the major business. Agriculture, of course, too. But the reason so many people come to Florida is because she's beautiful. And she's also, in my opinion, the state with the most beautiful name, La Florida, the flower. And I think we have a duty, a God-given duty, and an obligation to be good stewards of the land and the water, protect our precious environment, because in Florida, our environment and our economy are inextricably linked, I think. People come here because of her beauty, because of the beautiful people who live here, all of our fellow Floridians. And so I think the way you help business the most is to protect the environment, protect tourism, make sure that this industry that does so much is protected. Now, on the other hand, you have Governor DeSantis, who, believe it or not, is attacking Disney World. You talk about an institution in the Sunshine State. Certainly Disney World is among them. And the fact that he's in this anti-business fight with one of the largest employers in the state of Florida is shocking to me. And I don't think that's doing unto others as you would have done unto you. It breaks my heart. But I'm running for governor, and I hope to have the opportunity with your support to be able to change the tone in Tallahassee and get us back to good and God.
Perry, you want to take a stab? I can keep going. If you want me to keep going.
Well, no, no, but in fact, I do really want to sit back, because Governor Crist, I would really, although I am a voting citizen of Florida, to really talk to the public at large, because they don't get these opportunities. But I do really want to ask, as I step back, many know you as the former governor of Florida and as a Republican. In this very divisive and world that we're living in, where parties are so at odds with each other, as well as in this new disinformation, misinformation campaigns that are taking place. I want to give you this opportunity to speak to the wider community who may not have known, to at least express, because they're here Republican and automatically disregard anything that you have to say. So how can I want to give you that opportunity to frame who you are were as a Republican, and what was that journey that led you here now to now say that I am a Democrat and I want to represent you?
Well, thank you, Perry. I appreciate the opportunity, and it's a very important question, at least I think to a lot of your viewers who hopefully many of which are Florida voters. So I was a Republican governor, and I was a Republican, frankly, because mom and dad were. I'm a Methodist because mom and dad are. Same thing. So not that the party and the religion are the same thing, but the same rationale led me to become a Republican that led me to become a United Methodist. So, the older I got, the more I had in different offices in Florida. You see things and you start to hear things. And around 2009, 2010, we had the rise of the Tea Party and the Republican Party nationwide. And it started to develop a coarseness that I started to become pretty uncomfortable with. But really the straw that broke the camel's back, Perry, that led me to ultimately become a proud Florida Democrat more than 10 years ago now, was an event that I was involved with President Barack Obama. So I was in my office in Tallahassee as the governor. It was February of 2009. We're in the Great Recession. The economy had collapsed. My office had gotten a call from the White House asking if I wanted to join President Obama the following week in Fort Myers, Florida. He was going to come down for a rally for the Recovery Act, the stimulus. So staff came into my office in Tallahassee and they said, Governor, we've gotten a call from the White House. The president's inviting you to be with him, if you want to, next week in Fort Myers to talk about the Recovery Act. Do you want to go? And I said, absolutely. And they said to me, Perry, are you sure? And I said, yeah, why do you ask? And they said, well, he's a Democrat. I said, he is the president of the United States of America. And he is coming here to help Florida and the whole country get out of this economic mess that we're in. So you tell him I am coming and I'll be there. So the next week I went to Fort Myers. I'm waiting for the president in the Fort Myers Convention Center right downtown. And all of a sudden I'm in this like garage area. The big black Cadillac comes rolling in. And of course, it's the president in the back seat. And then Congressman Robert Wexler with him. So the president looks at me and he goes like that, come over here. So I came walking up to the back door of the car. He opens it up. The congressman gets out. The president slides over and he goes, Charlie, have a seat for a minute. So I sat down with him and he said, just a couple things before we do this. I said, yes, sir. He said, number one, thank you for coming. You're going to catch a lot of heat for being with me here today. And I said, well, I don't think so. And he goes, yeah, you are. He said, but since you did come, would you mind introducing me today to this audience? I said, that'd be an honor too. Happy to do it. He said, okay, let's keep it simple. He said, you see those steps over there in front of the car? I guess he had been briefed on the logistics. We'll go up those steps. That'll lead us into the auditorium. It's going to be loud. Be prepared. It's really going to be loud. I said, okay, I'll be ready. He goes, no, you don't understand. These are my people. It's going to be loud. I said, okay, I got you. So we go walking in together and it was jumping. I mean, it was really loud. He was right. And he further instructed me, you just go up to the podium, say what's on your heart about me or about the Recovery Act. I'll come up and do my thing and that'll be it. Is that all right? I said, absolutely, Mr. President. That's fine. You're the commander in chief. So I went up to the podium and I gave what I thought was a proper introduction of a president. And I concluded by saying, please give a warm Florida welcome to the President of the United States, President Barack Obama. And the place went crazy. And the president comes up to the podium. He shakes my hand. And then he pulls me in and he hugged me and I hugged him back. It went and came like that, but somebody took a picture of that hug. And it was really the hug that killed me as a Republican. I'm not kidding. And I'll tell you what I came to notice and learn in the next few days, hearing from Republicans around the state, why were you with the Democrat? Why did you go with President Obama? They didn't care a whole lot for him. And I responded, well, because, he came here to help Florida. He came here to help our country. He came here wanting to give us $12 billion so we didn't have to fire 20,000 teachers, lay off law enforcement officers, lay off fighter fighters that protect our home. I said, that's why. But what really got to me was what I came to learn later and see more clearly. It wasn't because I hugged a Democratic president. It's because I hugged the first Black president. And it broke my heart because I wasn't raised that way in St. Petersburg by my mom and dad. I was raised to treat all people with respect and with dignity and with kindness. And that's all I was extending to President Obama. And because of that, that is the straw that broke the camel's back with me. And I am proud to say that I am a Florida Democrat through and blue and blue. That's the story.
Okay. Brandon and Josh, you guys are you ready?
Yes. I'm ready.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Good evening, Congressman. How are you?
I'm great. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well, thank you. And I appreciate that story you gave about President Obama. Very heartwarming, but I have to change it just a little bit to what's going on right now in Tallahassee. As you know, Governor DeSantis produced a new congressional map for Florida. Congressional Districts 5 and Congressional Districts 10, largely African-American, will be weakened. Two-part question. I have an idea of what you would do as governor, but if you are elected as governor, what would you do to reverse that? And number two, even now in your position as a congressman at the federal level, what can you do to help combat that?
Right. Great question. Great issue. Huge issue. So the two districts that the governor put new maps out about, well, he did it about all of them, but the two that got really impacted the most are held by Val Demings, who will be our U.S. Senate candidate. And I'm very excited about that. I'm very happy for her in Florida that she's running. Number two, Al Lawson, dear friend of mine for years and years and years. We served together, Al Lawson and I, Big Al, as I call him, in Tallahassee for a long time. He was one of the first people to endorse me for this race for governor. And he's endorsed me in prior races for governor. And Val, of course, as I said, is running for the Senate. But these are two strong African-American representatives. And Governor DeSantis and the legislature basically stripped them of those congressional districts. And it's horrible. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it as it's race intended. And it's, what are we in the 1950s? I mean, this is stunning to sit there and witness something like that. So what would I do? I never would have signed off on those maps if I were governor today. I never would have proposed them because I believe in fundamental fairness for all people. One of our main slogans in the campaign is a Florida for all, meaning, if you're gay or straight, you're Black or white, you're short or tall, for all people. And that's what I believe in. I mean, my grandfather immigrated from Greece. My grandmother immigrated from Lebanon on my father's side. On my mother's side, they came from England and Ireland and Switzerland. So I'm a mutt, and most Americans are. I mean, we're a melting pot. And Florida's the melting pot of America. So in Congress, what can we do to try to affect this? Well, number one, I would advise as a former attorney general that we take those maps that they just approved that eliminated those two African-American districts, essentially, challenge it in court, because I believe it's unconstitutional, what just happened. And we got a good ruling out of a court about 2 weeks ago, kicking out the anti-voting bill that Governor DeSantis and the legislature passed. So it was by a federal judge, which is good. I think we need to do the same thing. And as a congressman, I would advise that to the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, and other groups that would have obvious concerns with this new development in our congressional districts in Florida.
Awesome. Thank you, Congressman.
Brandon?
Brandon, you might be muted.
Good evening, Congressman. How are you?
Good evening. Great to hear you.
Okay. I'm trying to put together what I want to say because I feel like it's one of the unspoken problems in the Democratic Party. I almost look at it as you have red and you have blue, you have Democrat versus a Republican, and I almost look at it as prize fighters. And one prize fighter has one arm, the other prize fighter has two arms. I feel like the Republican prize fighter has one arm, and that arm that he uses very effectively is messaging, whether it's false information, propaganda, so on and so forth. And it always seems to knock Democrats out for some reason. But Democrats have two arms. You have the policy upper hand and you have the moral upper hand. But that never seems to resonate with people. So what I would want to know is, how would you go about winning what seems to be most important, what gets people to vote, what resonates with people? What type of messaging are you going to put out to combat the bad faith messaging behind don't say gay and CRT and all these things that seem to be winning that we know are not true, aren't based in anything logical, but just to get a base riled up and to basically create chaos and division? What would you do in terms of your messaging to kind of turn this around? Because Democrats seem to always get clobbered in this manner, and this is why you lose elections, not because you guys don't have the moral or the policy high ground. So I just don't understand how you're always losing in certain situations when you're fighting a one-armed fighter, as I put it.
Right,
because
right.
You
No,
seem to
I
have
hear
a platform or policies that people care about, because their policies seem to be culture wars all the time.
Right.
So
That's right. That's right. And most folks don't care about that. They get people riled up, but they don't get anything positive done. All it does is divide, and it's a wedge issue. It gets their base, jazzed, but just their base and their base alone ain't enough to win. So what would I do? I would tell the truth. I always strive to tell the truth. And let me speak to the Black community specifically. What would I do as governor? Well, if you elect Charlie Crist as your governor, you're going to have a governor again who believes in restoration of rights of former felons, returning citizens. I did that as your governor. You can judge me by my deeds and not just my words. Because of what I did then, 155,000 returning citizens got not just their voting rights restored, but their rights to get different licenses and permits for employment and gainful employment, to be able to support their family, to restore their soul, to bring them back into society, give them a second chance. We're taught that in the Bible. We all deserve a second chance. You would also have a governor, again, who believes in your voting rights. I mean, when I was a Republican governor, mind you, in 2008, President Obama's first election against John McCain, who vetted me to be his vice presidential running mate. Now he chose the lady instead, and that all did what it did. But it's interesting to note, because we had huge lines in Florida with our first early voting in 2008, and the lines in late October, early November were unbelievable. And you know how it is in Florida; it can still stay pretty warm in early November in Florida, and it was. So I got a call from State Senator Dan Gelber, now the mayor of Miami Beach. Great guy, great friend. He calls me up in my office in Tallahassee, and he says, Governor, do you see these long lines in the local news in Tallahassee of what we're doing, happening down here in Miami, Lauderdale, Palm Beach? It was happening all over the state, Jacksonville. And I said, yeah, it's awful. And he said, well, why don't you do something about it? And I said, well, Senator, what do you suggest? He said, why don't you sign an executive order expanding the hours of early voting? And I said, wow, that sounds like a great idea. I said, Senator, do you think the governor has the authority to do it? He's a very smart lawyer. And he said, I don't know, but you have a general counsel there in the governor's office. Why don't you ask him? So I will do that. I said, I'll do that, Dan. And so I called the general counsel into my office. I laid out to him what the senator had suggested to me. And I said, do I unilaterally, by myself, as governor of Florida, have the authority to write an executive order expanding the hours of early voting so all these folks that are waiting in line get their vote cast? And my general counsel said to me, I don't think you do have that authority. And I said, well, let's talk about it. You know, I'm a lawyer too. Used to be your attorney general, in fact. Why do you say that? And he said, well, because I've read the statute. And I said, well, what does it say? He said, basically what it says is for you to sign an executive order, there must be a state of emergency. I said, okay, well, that's interesting. We're a democracy, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, and what's happening in our democracy in Florida today is that people who want to vote aren't being able to cast their ballot. I said, that's an emergency. And so I want you to go draft the order. I will sign it. And, you know, I served with John Lewis, a great civil rights leader from Georgia, God rest his soul. And he used to always tell us, me and my colleagues, anybody who would listen, your right to vote is precious. And it's so precious, it's probably sacred, God. So I signed the order. That afternoon, all 67 counties in Florida expanded their hours of early voting. Folks were all able to vote, and they cast their ballots. And guess who won the election? Barack Obama won Florida. And then he did it again 4 years later.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things you can expect if you have a Governor Crist versus a Governor DeSantis on specific issues that hit the African-American community. And education's another one. I'll just wrap it up with the third one. Education's so important, public education, supporting the fact that our children get the very best education possible. I view education as the equal opportunity provider in our country. That if we give everyone equally a wonderful foundational education, then they have the opportunity to, if they want to, go on to college or learn a trade or whatever it might be. But getting that foundational education that is second to none is paramount for that to happen for not only Blacks, for all of our citizens and our children in Florida.
Mr. Crist, if I could,
Thank you so much.
I have some questions that's coming from the audience, and if I
Okay.
could,
Bobby.
Yeah.
Bobby. And
Yeah.
before you start those, let me just ask that if you have a question, it'll help if you put QQ in front of it so that we'll know that it's a question as opposed to a statement. We're trying to get to, we're getting a lot of comments, but we want to make sure that we do identify the question. So if you can just identify your question with a QQ before you do it, that will really help us. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Perry. And again, I'm working between these devices. Okay,
Right.
I'll try, Mr. Crist, if I can. I'll ask you three questions.
Just
If you
Charlie, please.
Oh, okay, Charlie. Yeah, and I still want my lapel pin back from you. But anyway, no. Okay. So here we go, Charlie. It says the residents of the state have watched more and more loss of its civil rights, most notably restrictions on voting. What specific actions will you advocate and support to stop this assault in Florida?
Repealing those laws immediately.
Okay.
And you know, the one that really bothers me is the one that just got thrown out by the courts. I think I referenced it a little bit earlier. Thank God for the judicial branch, and we ought to talk about that later. But you know, it was going to make it harder to do mail-in voting. I mean, I got an 89-year-old father, 87-year-old mother. They love to vote by mail. Frankly, I do too. You know, and a lot of folks do. And if you are in a pandemic, it's safer. The other thing in that bill that got knocked out, thank God, was the fact that it was going to not have drop boxes in minority communities all across our state, making it harder for minorities to get their vote in and counted. That's wrong. And that's why the court threw it out, thank God. But, you know, repealing those kind of laws, and if you can't get them repealed, make sure you take them to court where we can have a judiciary that'll be fair and just.
Okay, and touching on questions that are maybe sensitive to some. At one point, if you could clarify this, Charlie. At one point, it was stated in a news article that your name was Chain Gang Charlie, and they showed a picture of you and another legislator standing over some inmates, if you will. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Sure, happy to. So
Mhm.
this is like 1993, 1994. I'm a young state senator. Florida at that time had the dubious distinction of being number one in violent crime in America. Every 3 minutes and 45 seconds, another rape, another robbery, another murder was happening, and a lot to children. It was a terrible state. I can remember it got so bad that at one point the governor then was Lawton Childs. He made a trip down, people were getting murdered at our, way stations on our interstates from Europe. I mean, it was killing our tourists and everything. He went down to Miami to make a trip to go, tour a community. When he got out of his SUV, out of his vehicle with FDLE guards, he put on a bulletproof vest. That's how bad it was in Florida at that moment in time. So I co-sponsored an amendment that would bring chain gangs back to Florida with a Democrat. I was still a Republican, a Democratic member from the East Coast of Florida. We co-sponsored it together. Well, an editorial writer only identified me and gave me that nickname. But I can tell you, the message I wanted to send was that if you committed a crime and raped a Florida woman, murdered one of Florida's children, or robbed, one of our elder citizens' home, there were going to be consequences. I learned consequences as a kid when I grew up in St. Pete. If I did something wrong, I got spanked. And so anyway, the message was to say, don't do these things to our people. Don't hurt them. And guess where most of those crimes were being committed? In the community, in minority communities. That's where the vast majority of those crimes were happening. Well, not just because of that law. And it was really on a very limited basis. And so what happened is crime started going down. Consequences were being realized. Floridians were becoming more safe. I don't think they even do that anymore in Florida. But I also want to stress this. I'm a fair person, and everything I do is based on fairness. And the Chain Gang Charlie thing got a little confused with some racial aspects for some reason. Had nothing to do with anybody's race. It only had to do with their criminal record. I don't care if they were white or black or green. This was to try to make sure that those people who were committing these crimes stopped doing it, and that there were consequences to pay if you committed those kind of crimes. And so, but I also restored the rights of former felons as your governor. I also, made sure that in a civil rights case, we reopened it as your attorney general for Harry T. and Harriet Moore, who were savagely blown up on Christmas night in their home, African Americans, in their home in Mims, Florida, because they dared to try to register voters. So I call them like I see them. If people are committing crime, there ought to be a consequence. If people have had their civil rights violated, there ought to be a consequence to that too. And if people aren't being able to vote because they committed a crime previously, they deserve a second chance. That's me. That's what I believe, trying to do justice and protect people and their safety.
And you have, and I wanted to balance that by saying there was a case back in Perry, Florida, where this gentleman, this black gentleman, and some others were asked to leave a pool because of their color, and just trying to remember that case, you brought charges against that hotel owner, and eventually some things changed. So I wanted to balance that off. I know there's some things said, but I want us to understand and see that there is a balance, even with the civil rights case, the Martin Lee Anderson case, there. So, and I'll back up and let other folks come in, but there are questions from the audiences here. So, but I'll back up.
Yeah. Brandon or Josh, Layla, interview, because I do have a question. If not, if we want to continue on that discussion.
I actually do have a question. Just one last question for him. What are your thoughts on the state rejecting 54 of the 132 textbook applications due to critical race theory references?
I think it's awful. What would I do if I were governor? I would advocate that we teach facts in school. Just make it fact-based, whether the topic would be slavery, or let's say the Holocaust, or learning about the American Revolution or World War II or, Pearl Harbor, whatever. Teach facts to our kids. That's what we're supposed to do, And so what we've seen from this governor is trying to create wedge issue after wedge issue to try to divide us, to attack LGBTQ kids and take politics into the classroom. It's unbelievable. It's wrong what he's doing. And it's wrong to ban books. I mean, listen, these kind of things that we're talking about here in 2022 in Florida are things that happened years and years ago in other parts of the world. Banning of the books, burning books. I mean, those things happened in Germany, So we're, I think, at a very important point in Florida's history and America's history here. And it's really good versus bad. It's not right versus left in political sense. It's right versus wrong. These things that this governor, in my humble opinion, are doing with the legislature's consent are dead wrong. Eliminating 2 African-American seats in Congress, banning books in our schools that talk about, facts. There's an old expression about history. Those who don't know history may be condemned to repeat it. And usually that is used in the context of talking about the Holocaust and what happened to the Jews, the 6 million who were murdered by Nazi Germany.
Okay.
Congressman, I have one question. One thing that plagues the state right now is the issue with property insurance. The average homeowner has seen their premium double within the last 18 months, and services, the offerings of the insurers are getting smaller and smaller, and a lot of insurers have pulled out of Florida altogether. Should you be elected as governor, how would you handle that?
I do what I did the last time I got elected your governor. That issue was staring us straight in the face in the fall of 2006, just like it is right now in the spring of 22. You're absolutely right. Property insurance rates were homeowners insurance going through the roof, just like other issues in the economy that the governor doesn't address. The price of gas at the pump, the cost of trying to rent an apartment in Florida and be able to afford it, let alone try to buy a house. All these middle class, working class economic issues, the governor is not focused on them because he wants to attack Mickey Mouse and he wants to create, other wedge issues and divide us all. I want to unite us all and make sure that what we do when it relates to property insurance, as you mentioned, right after I got elected in 2006 and then got sworn in January of 2007, I called my first special session to address property insurance. And we lowered property insurance rates 10%, gave people the relief that they needed. The other thing the governor and the legislature should do right now is eliminate the sales tax on gasoline. And if we combine that with the same thing from the federal government, each Floridian would save 45 cents a gallon. That will make a difference in people's lives and help them, not pit us against each other on these other, wedge issues that he promotes and pushes. And make sure that we reinstate and refund the Sadowski Fund, which is specifically there to help Floridians be able to afford to put a roof over their head. Governor's not doing that. They emptied out the Sadowski Fund, which is a fund that is used for housing opportunity for our fellow Floridians, hundreds of millions of dollars, and they swept it out. So, he's forgetting about the middle class. He's forgetting about, working class Floridians. I think he's forgetting about these things because he's laser focused on running for president and getting that hard right Republican primary voter in 2024. He's forgetting about Florida in 2022.
Okay.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
I have a question. So I think about 6 years ago, the Herald Tribune did a story on bias on the bench, essentially noting by looking at a database in terms of the crime in the state of Florida and how there was bias against blacks. And I'll just read something. Among the findings was Florida's sentencing system is broken. When defendants score the same points in the formula used to set criminal punishments, indicating they should receive equal sentences. Blacks spend far a long time behind bars. Is there something as governor, or is there advocacy there to ensure that this practice that's, been one of America's first sins to not give us the equal justice we deserve? How would you go about trying to rectify such a long-standing and devastating problem?
A couple of things. Number one, appoint more Black judges to the bench. We don't have a Black Florida Supreme Court justice right now. You know who appointed the last Black Supreme Court justice in Florida? I did. Justice Perry. We need to have more African Americans represented on the judiciary, in the judiciary, and as judges. Another thing I would do, because one of the problems where this has come up, particularly in minority communities, is with marijuana. I believe that we need to legalize marijuana recreationally in Florida. Want to get that done right away for several reasons. Number one, in terms of healthcare, I saw my older sister Margaret pass away from a brain tumor about 6 years ago, and the kind of pain she went through in the last days of her life. And I think about, if she had had the ability to utilize cannabis to address that kind of pain, how much better would her end of life experience have been? Number two, when we legalize it, we can regulate it and tax it. And I think when we legalize it also is expunge the records of those who had been wrongfully convicted and served way too much time for what would then have been a crime. And that way, I think you address a significant problem in our entire state, but certainly in the minority community as well. Get good judges, legalize marijuana, regulate it, tax it, and use those tax revenues, which will be enormous because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, to help strengthen our education system, which I touched on earlier, to provide an equal opportunity for education, and make sure that we have good training for law enforcement to make sure that those who make us safe keep us safe. And we don't have the kind of experience we had in Minneapolis with George Floyd.
Right. One of the viewers asked the question. It's really two. She says, candidate who has already served the state of Florida residents as a governor, if you take back the governor's mansion, what top priorities would you handle in your first 100 days in office? That's one. The second part is, why do you want to be the governor of Florida? She asked.
I want to be the governor of Florida because I love Florida. I love Florida with all my heart, and I love our people. And I know they deserve better than what they're getting right now. What would I do in the first 100 days? A hell of a lot. And I would start with making sure that our voting laws are where they need to be, so that if any of these attempts to strip away our democracy from us by DeSantis and the legislature gets fixed. I'd also make sure that we have an education system. We're the third largest state in the country. We are 49th in what we pay our school teachers. 49th. That's embarrassing. I mean, it deserves more attention. It deserves more funding, and it deserves more focus. So education, important. Voting rights, extremely important. Getting rights restored again, as I did when I was governor before, so that more re-entering citizens get their voting rights back and their rights to work and can restore their soul, as well as their opportunities to have gainful employment and a good quality of life. I mean, that's just a few of the things. There are many others. Guys, I think I'm getting to the time where I've got about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
I'm enjoying this. I got to tell you, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to go through these things, question by question and respond.
Yeah.
It's great. Thank you.
Well, I do have one, if I can jump back in. And Congressman, thank you for your thoughtful responses. And so one of the things I want to ask is, we can always identify that the minority community is sort of the driver for a Democrat success, specifically the Black community. But however, when we look in terms of where financing goes in campaigns, the monies targeted for those communities never match the overwhelming desire that's needed to get those wins. What is it that you're going to do in this campaign? Because let me be honest, you're going to need minority communities more than ever.
I hear you, and I agree.
That has to start in your campaign.
Mhm.
And so, what is it that you want to help see in your campaign that you haven't? Because you've got plenty under your belt. What is it that you want to do in this campaign specifically to speak to those communities in a very direct way to get them to get the output that you're really going to need for this? So,
Advertise with
what are
you.
some of the things that you're doing?
Advertise with you. Invest in advertising in African American media, in Black newspapers, Black radio stations. I mean, when I ran for governor before, I had radio commercials it was President Obama endorsing me to be your governor. And we didn't only run it on Black radio, we ran it on all radio, and would do that again. And advertisements with Bill Clinton too. These things are important. People need to hear validators, and advertising in, weekly African American newspapers, being on African American radio, advertising across the board, and a panacea of opportunities through social media as well. That's what we need to do, and that's what I will do.
Yeah. Well, and let me also add, if we can, that the source for all of that is always key. And so, while those are important, there are some African American advertisers that can very much get traction in some other areas. And so that's what, really want to begin to introduce, that we don't always seek the same things expecting a different result. There are some entities in our communities that do not get touched. And so want to help you. And that's what this was for, is to help not just our community get to know you, but so that you can know the value of our community.
Oh, I see it.
To help win this community.
That's why I'm here tonight. This is not an accident. I have tremendous respect and admiration.
Right.
And the message that you're able to convey and communicate as effectively as you do is something that I have enormous respect for.
Okay, Charlie, before you go, there's
Yeah.
another question from one of the viewers, and he says African Americans and people of color are overrepresented in Florida criminal justice system.
Right.
What opportunities, i.e., employment or in education, can be introduced to reduce the prison to pipeline in Florida?
I'll go back to education because it's I really think fundamental. It's why I signed legislation to have a law school at Florida A&M University, and the law school actually is in Orlando, not at the main campus in Tallahassee. But you got to continue to provide and look for those opportunities to make sure that there's a way up and a way out and an opportunity to succeed. And I really do think it starts with education. We got to pay our teachers more so your students get even better teaching when they're in school. And so I think these are the fundamentals that we have to pursue, and grants and aid for small business entrepreneurs in the African American community. Make sure we have that, opportunity to share what, other corporations may be advantaging from, and make sure that it's focused on the minority communities throughout the state of Florida too, because it should be. This is about fairness. This is about doing the right thing. What was his name? Spike Lee produced the movie. I think his first big hit was Do the Right Thing. Great movie. Well, this is about doing the right thing too. For all of you, for all of us, for all of Florida. That's my campaign.
Okay.
And if people would like to help, they can go to charliecrist.com.
Great. All right.
And Charlie, along with what we have been finding out in these different groups of communicating, trying to really understand voting and what it means. Anyway, so what we're finding is that there are a lot of different groups or different people doing things, but there is no conversation. They're doing them in silence, as opposed to collectively unifying. So you mentioned some things. So how do we get your people to get to our people so we can get to all people? And
I think we're doing what we're doing right now is how we do it. It's through communication, critically important, conversation, meeting in the public square, which is really what we're doing right here, right now. And that's absolutely fundamental for us to be able to communicate well together so that we have an effective message going out from each other that is unified and just crystal clear, so that nobody's confused about the choice coming up in this election or any other one for that matter. It's vitally important. The communication is the key.
Okay. I'm going to flip the pages back in history 1 second. I'm going to go back to Rosewood. If I'm not mistaken, I think Rosewood was probably the first time that reparations were ever given in this country. And I do believe you had something to do with that.
I did. And I was on the Judiciary Committee in the state Senate and was chairing the subcommittee that was reviewing that bill to see if the bill would go forward to the floor of the Senate for a vote and passage. The weekend before I went home on a Friday from Tallahassee, a dear friend of mine, State Senator Darrell Jones, who's a great lawyer in South Florida, has already endorsed me in this race, my dear friend. He came to me and he said, Charlie, this is the case. I want you to take it home with you this weekend and just review it. And I know if you review it and you read it, you'll come down on the right side of history in this case for reparations, for Rosewood, the massacre that happened there in the early 1900s. I took it home. I took it to heart what he had to say. And I read the case, all of it. And he was exactly right. I realized that a horrible incident had occurred and that the wrong needed to be righted. Do the right thing again. And so when I got back to Tallahassee the next week, I made that recommendation to the subcommittee. It went on to the full committee, went to the floor of the Senate, and it was one of the first reparations passed in American history.
Okay, very good. Okay, I know we didn't. Ariel, did you have some questions from the audience, or I know Charlie he said he had to leave. He sounded like he got a cold too. So,
well, we're fighting it.
Yeah,
I got to get rest is important.
Yeah.
Well, I did have one. If you can just, it may be a quick one. Daniel Rivera says, by dissolving Reedy Creek, $1 billion in debt will be transferred to Orange and Osceola counties.
Right.
In his opinion, he says every single voter in these two counties should vote against DeSantis if they don't want to be on the hook for paying back all that debt. My question is, as governor, what would you do in reference to the Disney and Reedy Creek specifically to ease the burden in both Orange and Osceola counties?
I would let Reedy Creek and Walt Disney World keep the status that they had before they passed this horrible law yesterday in the Senate, today in the House. And if they had passed it, I would have vetoed it. Look what Disney World has done for all of us, done for tourism in Florida. I mean, it's shocking that our governor's that anti-business and anti-tourism. I'll extend his anti-tourism also to include the cruise industry, which he attacked earlier this year. I mean, it's unbelievable. And specifically to your question, the impact it's going to have on Orange and Osceola County, you know what I call what the governor just did? He just levied the biggest I-4 tax in Florida history on the citizens of those counties. It's horrible. It's horrible.
Okay.
That's why we're going to win. And I got to go. And I love you.
I know. We just got that text from your people. So, Charlie, thank you so very much, and we look forward to doing this again.
Thank you. And I can't wait to see you in person again. I miss you.
Yeah.
All right. But let's do this again too. This has been wonderful.
Sure.
Very, very gracious of you. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
God bless you.
Go in peace.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good night. Thank you.
We still live, Gary.
I know we're still live.
Live.
We'll be going off in a few.
Okay.
No hot mics.
Yeah.